speak for the quality. That's all right. For this meeting, each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. We expect comments, civil, disrespectful, or disruptive behavior will be tolerated. Or not authorized under the Colorado Open Meetings Act. Comment or take action at this meeting. Issue raised by public comment is not part of the. I don't have a sign-up sheet, but we have Ned Stern with us, who's shared a handout. Do we have one? So, yeah, take it away, Ned.
Greetings. My name is Ned Stern. I'm here to ask the ESB in your capacity as an accountability body for Littleton's relationship with South Suburban Parks and Recreation to stop their proposed concrete paving of the Lee Gulch Trail between Prince Street and the Mary Carter Greenway. Some history. This is the third attempt by South Suburban to concrete significant portions of the Lee Gulch Trail. The first two were thwarted by neighbors wanting to protect the Lee Gulch Granite Fines Trail, which brings us to the current attempt. On October 7th, with no public notice on the trail or their website, South Suburban began concreting what was to be 2,300 feet of trail between Prince Street and Mary Carter Greenway. By 11 a.m., after calls by concerned neighbors, the pour was halted with only 190 feet of concrete in place. Now South Suburban is belatedly soliciting community input via a rush survey required to be completed by December 20th. Your project description laments how expensive it is to maintain the Granite Fines Trail, but doesn't reveal the concrete would cost $180,000 to $195,000, or 23 to 38 times the annual maintenance cost for the Granite Fines Trail. This is not the way to conduct a balanced survey. The Lee Gulch Trail is one of 4 granite fines or soft trails that course through Littleton's finest natural areas east of the Platte River. In fact, Lee Gulch is the trail that connects this wonderful soft trail system. The segment that South Suburban proposes to concrete is the only connector between all of these soft trails. If cemented, the trails would be separated by up to 2/3 of a mile of concrete. Runners and walkers know a soft trail protects their feet and legs, in contrast to concrete, which is actually 10 times harder than asphalt. Bikers, horses, even wheelchairs use soft trails with ease. Concrete is not a green building material. South Suburban is proposing to install 371 cubic meters of this stuff, which will generate 102 metric tons of CO2, equivalent to the annual CO2 footprint of up to 26 houses or 22 cars. We should be rewilding the Lee Gulch corridor, one of Littleton's superb natural areas, not paving over paradise. So please join us to halt South Suburban's plan to concrete the Lee Gulch Trail between Prince Street and the Mary Carter Greenway. Work with South Suburban to build a comprehensive plan for preserving the Lee Gulch natural area and its soft trail. And please make this part of your next meeting's agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ned. Appreciate it. Pam, do you want to speak?
Sure. My name is Pam Chadbourne. I live a block and a half from here, and I missed the food, but it sounds absolutely right on. So thank you for bringing that. I hadn't heard about it. I hope you folks and the staff take this to the city management and get this work done. I wanted, not knowing about this, because I agree. I wanted to talk about the agenda for tonight. First off, I think the sustainability coordinator's presentation on the action plan has been great and useful. This is what you folks worked on for a year. You talked about these action items. We have a sustainability coordinator who sounds totally in the groove and able to assess these things and talk about them. This, I think, serves the city well. And it's what the citizens expect of this board, I think, in general. I think it's very reasonable to do that. So thank you for doing that, and great start, coordinator. So And then preparing for next year, good luck. And it's not easy, but I look forward to, knowing what you come up with for 2025. I'm gonna say though, city council are not the dictators of Littleton. They're acting like it. They have for years. It is inappropriate. And so when you go there, they should not be telling you what to do. You should be advising them about your area of expertise and responsibility. Please keep that in mind. They're not the gang of 7 or the gang of 4. This is a collaborative, cooperative team that's working together for the city and the people in the next 100 years. That's what all of you work for. We don't work for city council. None of us do. And they treat us that way. Don't take it if that starts. Third, for Parks and Rec, I think the concreting of a soft trail falls into that. Please don't get thrown literally into the weeds about Parks and Rec. As a resident, I feel that you serve the city best by advising on policies. Policies are not detailed practices. That's what paid staff is for. Your job is advisory on legislative policies. And I think this body is well prepared to do that. And so I look forward to your input on that. This is at the levels of goals, objectives, and requirements. And then, of course, you could review the staff products, which are detailed inputs to South Suburban Parks and Rec. But I think your goal is at that requirements level, outcomes and impacts that will guide the rules. Like limitations on poisons and toxins, equitable tree canopies citywide, habitat for insects, animals, wildlife, birds, bees, bats, where and what are the guardrails, buildings in the city, etc. Thanks.
All right, well, 3 discussion topics tonight. The first, I'll walk us through is Parks and Recreation best practices.
So apologies for the email to y'all with all the information right before you all had a holiday, but I thought it was interesting that the National Parks and Recreation Association, NRPA, is technically, you can get an accreditation through them, and South Suburban has an accreditation through them. So I started looking through some of their best practices, thinking that that could be a good framework for us to tailor a combination of what y'all think, maybe using some of the information learned from Root Renew, and then using that resource as a good argument for what you're thinking and your expertise, what residents are thinking, and also best practices in this space for an accreditation that they are a part of. And I put a link there, but it's they got some award this year that they were like putting all over their website. So they're very, I think it could be well aligned. So I have that. It's this report that it just pop up, and it's this best practices result and survey. So we don't need to necessarily go through it all, but if it helps to spark any ideas or thoughts, I'm happy to do so. But is there anyone that, should I?
Are there some highlights that you want to point out for us?
I think that this year is really important and really in their wheelhouse, the tree canopy side of things. And with that also probably tree diversification, because that is what will combat something like emerald ash borer, is to have different kinds of trees and not just like a monocropping it, as they say. I don't know if that's what you use for trees, but that's what I'm thinking of it as. And I know that's something that the city has done on city owned property, but maybe it would be helpful for them to hear like a concrete number that this also improves air quality. And we're also thinking about putting in air monitors and getting closer to that. So that could be near their parks, and it could be interesting for them to think about increasing that. It also increases habitat, right, for different animals. I think this piece on educating the public, also having some type of input and communications about what's happening, is sort of the broader theme of some of the public comments we've heard, but also from all that community engagement that City of Littleton did before I started with Root and Renew. It just sounds like people, they want to be kept in the know. They want to know what's happening and where their money is going to. I think some of the stuff in here, like the transportation alternatives is probably maybe outside of their wheelhouse. So unless there's something I'm not thinking of here.
I guess, so I'll jump in on that one. So
Yeah.
there is a possibility that, since we're talking about the Lee Gulch Trail, I don't believe it has a connection underneath Broadway. I don't think. So,
Goes over, you gotta cross.
yeah, it's
the
over.
street.
There's no underground
No.
pedestrian crossing. And that is something that we're actually trying to accomplish because there's a drainage problem over there. But we're also trying to get South Suburban to kick some money in for that. So that's one example I can think of for that, but there may be other crossings I'm not thinking about where they could help out, so people don't have to cross that grade.
Quick clarification, you'd mentioned they were accredited through the NRPA. Is that just an accreditation with them in general, or was there a specific accreditation for like sustainability or something other specific within?
It was in general, but they say, like, NRPA says that all of their members are, like, this is the best practice they see across the board for like their accredited members, and to be an accredited member, they're supposed to have certain things in place. Now it's a national organization, so for them to go on the ground and say, yes, this is what's happening, is very different than having it in a vision plan. So I think that might be.
And we don't necessarily know or do we know what the requirements are to become accredited that South Suburban adhered to, or?
They became a member, I believe, in 2019. I'm not completely sure what the requirements are. I could reach out to the person at NRPA and see what they say about what that is. I'm not sure what all they will be willing to disclose since I'm not from South Suburban.
And maybe it's just the general requirements, like to be an accredited member,
Yeah.
Is there any environmental components associated with that? Or is it kind of like you pay a fee and now you're a member type of thing?
I mean, national parks.
I think if their accreditation was premised on any sustainability work they'd done, they would have led with that when we talked about it.
Yeah, I would think so.
So, and I just looking at the website, to me, it seems just more of like a membership, which isn't a bad thing. It's nice to know that they have kind of some best practices associated with it, but it's not, it doesn't seem like, adhering to these best practices are a requirement for membership.
It just says it's supposed to be a valuable measure of the agency's overall operation management and service to the community. So as you're mentioning, it's very broad. I just wonder if in terms of bringing in concrete resources, it's an organization they know. They don't have to do, I don't think they necessarily are forced to do anything that NRPA says. I think they might, you can't see the website I was looking at, but I think they might have more of an incentive to want to align with what they think might already be happening because of this accreditation.
Yeah, and I think it's nice to be able to bring the kind of best practices to the table for the discussion to kind of say, as an accredited member of this organization, here's, what we're asking is aligned with what NRPA.
Right, I do think it is something they probably just pay into and I eventually probably get. I just think it might hold more weight than saying like, oh, this is a scientific research study published at this university. Like meeting them a little bit more on their level was sort of what I was thinking about. I think the other big part of this, sorry, this is probably looks very stressful to see me scrolling, but let's see.
Is there a long form version of this set of recommendations, Laura? This looks like maybe an executive summary or.
Yeah, I sent over the link of sort of all of their different sustainability policies. There's an entire thing on like pollinator gardens. Like I think it's like some type of guides. They have guides on their website of if you wanted to do this, these are steps you could take to get this thing done. I think the other big part of the piece is thinking about like, so the barriers that might prevent them from implementing sustainability measures and also showing that like there is evidence in here of cost savings. So thinking about those initial upfront costs and what makes sense I feel like is important. The stuff on the pollinator gardens is also really interesting and could be good to explore as well. Do y'all want me to pull up their website? That'd be helpful.
And I'm on their website. It looks like there is an accreditation process with an application, a training that's required, a self-assessment report. But a reaccreditation is required every 5 years. But can't see much more stuff.
Looking at the table of contents for the sustainability report from NRPA, and I definitely think it could be a useful tool among other tools as we're making recommendations for the negotiation with South Suburban. I think we're still gonna have to talk about pushing about encouraging some different organizational priorities for South Suburban. I mean, a lot of this presupposes that sort of leadership and district systems are, doing sustainability work. In other words, I think we have to start earlier. We just have to start more basic stuff when it comes to some of the issues with South Suburban and sustainability. But yeah, I think it'll be a good addition to the toolkit. Anyway,
This is the website for their environmental pillars on the NRP website. If there's anything. So yeah, they have different like plans and guides. I think this is maybe the one that we were going through just now. This might be the long form one. I'm not sure you want me to scroll through it, but.
how plug and play is any of this, Laura, and is any of it regionally specific?
Not really. I mean, they're a national organization, so there might be regional specific guidelines somewhere. There wasn't any that I could obviously find. Cause it's not they don't just do sustainability, they do recreation, community engagement. I mean, it all connects as we know, but it's not, I don't think that they have specific offices in each state, which is what it would probably take to do something regionally specific.
I found the document that has the national accreditation standards, but I don't know is like, I doubt any park meets like 100% of these, but it does list, and like one of them is environmental sustainability policy and standard. The agency shall have an established policy on environmental sustainability that states the agency position on energy and resource conservation. It lists some additional stuff, and then another standard on natural resource management plans and procedures, recycling and zero waste plans. So some of the standards like do specifically address some of the things that, we'd probably be interested. But yeah, I'd be super interested to understand like when they get this accreditation, is it like you have to meet, 50% of these standards or 25% of these standards or?
Yeah, I think this is it's verifying. This is South Suburban's accreditation. Silly boxes, okay. This is kind of all they have on.
Basically just says like we are accredited.
Yeah, and they're like, we earned this prestigious award, right? So that's the part of me that wonders how much of it, including what they do for the community, agency and staff. This is all on their website. So, and it's linked to this organization and sort of the way that you're saying how they're accredited.
Yeah.
There's
There's also
also,
really great standards listed, but it doesn't mean that they meet all of them.
right. The turf conversion stuff is also really interesting. If you eliminate the stuff used for like, I think they have like softball field, like other types of playing fields, like what can be converted, could also be an interesting point to bring up. Something important that would tie into water conservation as well.
Just what the summary that you got up is what I'm looking at now, and some of this is really broad really high level type of stuff. That hopefully it's pretty obvious to South Suburban. Some of the headlines here are protecting the natural habitat and reducing water usage and reducing landfill waste. I mean, yeah, for sure. I think it would be useful to find, something that would be more plug and play. We could be recommending to South Suburban, like, here's a way to move in the direction of measurable sustainability in the district. Are you aware of anything like that on the NRPA website or in there?
They do have they did have something where you can go in and it's like worksheets and workbooks. Sorry, I'm gonna see if I can find it real quick. It wasn't, and it's supposed to help direct, and provide resources. I wonder what resources they also might get as accredited members, if there's like more that they have access to. Because there's ways I think that they can create their own profiles where they can figure out how they stack up in certain measurements. But it's through a membership with NRPA, which I think they probably definitely have that. I don't know if that would be in like the purview or the scope of what makes sense for y'all to advise the council, just they may or may not, they have the access to it.
I think the other thing this document is doing, the sustainability and parks and recreation document that you just had up, is basically, it's just gleaning statistics from formal sustainability plans that parks and rec districts across the country have created. And I mean, obviously South Suburban doesn't have a formal sustainability plan, but that should be a part of maybe what we ask for them to be doing as part of our relationship with them going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's certainly a recommendation that y'all could have. It also probably needs to include some type of community engagement in that process of making that plan. I feel like that would be a fair recommendation in terms of sustainability, just using this as an example, right? That it wasn't brought back to the people that it would impact.
Yeah, that's always an interesting question. And that's a question that's been in our culture recently on the ballot. We were asked again about, do we hunt mountain lions or do we let professional wildlife managers do it? And obviously the voters said what they said. It's similar here, right? When you go to the community, they're going to say one thing as people who aren't professional sustainability managers for Parks and Rec District. And sometimes, well, I'm not sure exactly how that would be in the district as a whole, to give these professional managers the right input for what they ought to be doing. I think there needs to be some leadership from South Suburban. I also think sometimes, as important as public input is, it's a simple way to cause delay. Thing that you're gonna do. Farm it out to public input for 6 months, and now you're 6 months later. Do things like, I mean, it's pretty basic stuff. That these formal sustainability plans are focusing on. Again, I mean, it's reducing water usage. Like, I don't know at what level of sort of useful insight some of the district is going to be able to tell South Suburban like how to reduce water usage.
Y'all could recommend, I mean, some of it could be xeriscaping to conversion. That can be part of your recommendations to council as a way, like as a broader goal. We want, this amount of water conservation, right? And these are some identified ways that we think we can get there. And same with, we want to increase, everyone's health and decrease like bad air quality, right? So a way to get about that is trees, and a way to make sure that these trees live for a long time is to do a diversity of trees. So like you could, I think, take some of this and breaking it down to show how that works. And then the capacity side of the house could come a little bit more from staff, but y'all are there to guide more of the sustainability side to make sure that it's part of the agreement too.
We just throw this in the mix, because this whole conversation is about what we're ultimately gonna recommend to the negotiators when we're talking to South Suburban. I talked with Reed Betzing, who's the city attorney, about sort of the mechanics and the logistics of this negotiation. Everything from, who's gonna be in the room and when's it gonna happen to, what type of enforcement is the city looking to achieve in its agreement with South Suburban. And none of that is quite formed up yet, and I think it will matter for what we ultimately recommend, or should be, at least things that we're considering. Is the city willing? Should we be recommending some type of opt-out, some type of enforcement mechanism? How much bite should it have? Things like that. Because an agreement like the one we have now, I mean, part of the problem is that there is no real accountability, and there's nothing measurable, there's nothing enforceable. Sort of a handshake type of agreement. And I think we're gonna have to do something significantly more specific than that if we're hoping to move the needle. And I don't know, neither did Reed yet, sort of where the temperature of all the negotiators is on that kind of a thing. So stuff to kind of stay tuned for. I asked him to circle back with us when he knows more. But anyway, Laura, is there more that you wanted to say about the sort of best practices?
No, I mean, I think those are some of the main ones. The other one is thinking about waste diversion, what's already happening, and how that can loop in with what the rest of the city might do in the future. I don't know what the legality of that is though. So but all of this could be recommendations that you provide to city council, right? You don't have to come up with the legal negotiations. That's a little bit what the lawyers, I mean, you're a lawyer too, but that's what the city attorney is gonna do. But if you can guide him on this subject matter expertise for sustainability, I think that'd be probably the most helpful.
Yeah, no, I just mean a negotiated agreement that doesn't have any enforcement in it. It's just wishful thinking. And I don't think we have a lot of reason to be sort of wishfully thinking when it comes to South Suburban sustainability. But some things for me at least start to emerge from this conversation and past conversations that we've had as a group about South Suburban. I think one thing that we need to recommend to South Suburban is that they establish some type of formal meaningful governance dedicated to sustainability within district. What did we hear from leadership when they were there, or when they were here? It was
Volunteer.
Couple of employees who
It's
find
sort
it
of-
interesting.
It sounded like it felt during COVID and never really came back to
Seems
it.
like a great recommendation for them. Like,
Yeah.
I love that.
I think it's a starting, sure. And
You can also recommend enforcement mechanisms, like
Yeah.
what you think is seized, like if it's not formed at all, that's something that y'all can think about if you want to. I don't know how much of I think that like having the sustainability, like more accountability group with South Suburban might be a little bit more, might make this impact a little bit more than getting too deep in the weeds on the legal agreement.
no, I don't mean to, be in there like editing language that Reed's trying to use. I'm just saying that it's important for us to know how willing the negotiators are to push for an enforcement mechanism. Because if we end up with nothing, we end up with exactly the same thing that we have now. I mean, it's just, again, wishful thinking. It's almost like South Suburban needs to do a process that's parallel to what Littleton has done, right? Which is where they've established a sort of governance body, right? Where the sustainability board, they need something like that, but it's gonna be professionalized, right? It's gonna be recreation district professionals talking about things like tree canopy and so forth. It's gonna be like their group of Kelseys and Laura's all in a room, right? And I think that they also need to do some type of formal sustainability action plan, and I think those are.
Yeah, or like report back on how they're doing on the goals that we recommend. If we wanted a certain amount of tree canopy increased or turf converted, like starting to talk to them about what those baseline measurements look like and where we want to see it go, where y'all want to see it go.
We'll say, and sort of an interesting question that's being got about the negotiations. I talked with Mike about this. I can't remember if I talked with Reed about this before. is, obviously taxpayers pay into the district. And then the district, if it wants to, can bond against those funds. With that money, they can whatever they want, build ice rinks or whatever. And, there's some conversation, in the city about, do we financially incentivize them? That we're asking them to do, which at first glance sounds to me a little bit, backwards, since we're paying taxes into the district. They should be using that money to do what the district constituency is telling them to do, but I mean, it may be something that we have to be thinking about recommending to the negotiators, like what pot of money can you be talking about the city coming up with to financially incentivize South Suburban to go and do a formal sustainability plan, because stuff like that always costs money, right? So for us to be thinking about, so stuff starts to emerge as things we gotta be recommending. So I don't know what other thoughts people have.
So are we just gonna tell them you need to come up with a plan, or are we going to tell them you need to come up with a plan and here's some places to start, like no more concrete,
Is that fair?
stop mowing, stop, putting pesticides, just cut the tree down and plant it. I mean, like, what are we looking at? Like,
I think I'm imagining, so just kind of listening, there's three main things that have emerged from the conversation of like what we so far would like to recommend to an extent. Formal sustainability action plan, formal sustainability management body of sorts within South Suburban, and then some type of enforcement mechanism, whether that's financial incentives or otherwise. And I'm imagining within each of those things, there's pieces that say, for the sustainability action plan, here are, almost like our action plan, but like, here's the top 5 priorities that we would, want y'all to make sure that are in there, including
give that to them.
and then make sure that, they should already have the resources to like the, in our PA, or what was it, in our, losing the acronym now.
That's fair enough.
Spot, you can buzz me. If we wanna call out a few things, I think that's great, but I think the overarching theme is that they need a sustainability action plan. They need a management body within the organization, and they need some kind of accountability associated with that. So to me, it's like coming together with like those 3 things, and then we can, describe those things as we want them to look. Okay.
I think another thing, that hopefully is obvious to everyone is that this has to be revisited, on a schedule and frequently.
Yeah.
For revisions by South Suburban and the city. It's been 30, 40 years, whatever, a long time since this one's been revisited, and that's just not best practice in any way. The city's on schedules to revisit things like the Unified Land Use Code, and South Suburban needs to be, on a more, a schedule to be meeting with the city about its relationship in general, but in particular, the sustainability stuff.
A good point.
I think it just, even if it's just a once a year and they just come and talk to us. A good place to start.
Are you thinking more of the operating agreement of the whole that we revisit like every 5 years? It's.
Yeah,
Oh,
what
okay. I was just thinking about our sustainability requirements and then reporting back to us. Through us.
We could probably ask for that as part of some version of that, to be like, there'd be an annual report out
Yeah,
of progress on,
right.
what achieved that and fine.
I really do think that they have a lot of experts, just like the city does, who are ready and eager to go and do sustainability work. They just need to be elevated within that organization. I think part of what we do in the negotiations is pressure or incentivize South Suburban to elevate those people, whether it's through a governance structure or reporting out or all kinds of different things, but they're there.
I'm just curious how willing Littleton is, as leverage in these negotiations to say, okay, well, we'll terminate the agreement then. Throughout all of this, South Suburban really can say no to a lot of it. I would hope that in good faith, they come to the table to try you know, recognizing that a 34-year-old operating agreement, that's like what, 2 pages, if that, is pretty unreasonable for the amount of things they manage for the city. But I'd be curious, you know, that really is our only leverage at this point to force their hand, and how willing are we to actually evaluate that, you know, so-called nuclear option?
So I've talked to a lot of the stakeholders, GM and Mayor Schlachter, and obviously, council member, Mayor Pro Tem Barr. I talked with, the council liaison, Pam Grove, and obviously we've heard from South Suburban and Brent and Kelsey and Laura and so on. I think right now the appetite on both sides for that nuclear option is pretty well figured out. And I think that, leadership has been working on the relationship so that South Suburban is hopefully receptive. And I think that's a bit of a thread. I think Jim's been working hard at that to his credit, and he's optimistic that he's making progress there. I hope he's right.
I mean, I would say our relationship is as good as it's ever been at this point. I guess I did notice they actually have sustainability on their website now, which is something that I don't remember them having before, so.
They did, I don't know if it's the same, but they have a page that listed like just bullet point items.
I mean, they don't have an action plan or anything like that. They're
Right.
just basically listing out.
Yeah, so that was there when they came and talked to us.
It's been there for a long time, since I would say at least 2020. I don't know if they've added a lot to it over the years. You know, 4 years ago or so, when I was looking at this thing, it was pretty greenwashy, if I'm honest. You know, it was like, installed some LED light bulbs in this one parking lot. It's like, I mean, seriously.
That's true.
It's like,
This is the one that I think is the most interesting. They have a pilot, a composting pilot project.
Really?
Mhm.
I think a lot of the stuff they talked about was just like internal, like in their operations versus like out in the district facility.
Oh, like maybe.
Literally just in their headquarters.
In their office.
Oh,
Yeah.
versus,
A few employees who are interested in it, and so they're doing a few things in the building.
versus being able to go into a park and
Percolating
banana peel in the
into all the
compost.
facilities and, yeah.
the pushback I think it was Anna gave them, was like, this is incidental. It's not systemic, right? It's not intentional, it's not measured. It's just a thing that's happening.
Piecemeal and.
Yeah, which is another, I mean, that suggests another recommendation, which is, you know, as part of their periodic reporting out, we need some measurables. And I think there's gotta be some standard setting body for all this sustainability stuff, probably a lot. And I don't want them developing their own system for measurables. I want them getting.
Greenhouse gas inventory is like
Yeah.
nationals, honestly, the global standard at this point. I mean, there's US communities that call for it, but.
Like some, yeah, you know, like you get third-party certification stuff for like organic food, that thing. Like who can come in and support them in their measurables or help them set up systems to measure?
I have a question, and maybe this has been asked before, or even just on the more of the side of researching this agreement. Do we have examples of other similar agreements between, I know ours is kind of a unique situation because a lot of parks and rec departments are kind of like part of the city, but do we have any other examples of operating agreements for a similar setup, you know, that y'all have used as a go-by for some of these?
Well, I know that Lone Tree recently redid their agreement with South Suburban. I have not seen it.
It probably
Kelsey.
doesn't have sustainability.
Probably, I don't know what it looks like.
You never know.
But I guess I'm just curious, and whether it's with South Suburban or not, like if there's other parks and rec departments that have agreements with cities, I just would be interested, you know, it's kind of one of those like, don't reinvent the wheel if you don't have to kind of things, or just the idea gathering from other, how sustainability is incorporated into some other operating agreements.
Yeah, cause normally, right, the city has their own parks and recs.
Yeah, that's why I know it's a little.
It's a
In
weird thing.
California.
This whole setup is weird
And
compared to other places I've been.
Yeah.
I guess Jefferson County would be an example, because Foothills Parks and Rec, that does all the unincorporated parts of Jeffco, but
they do.
I don't know. It's probably just with the county.
I know someone that works for the county, if I can reach out to him and see
Yeah.
what he says about that agreement, and 'cause he does my job at the county, Jeffco.
Are those types of agreements like public record where,
Should be, yeah.
if it's associated with the city.
It'd be useful to look at everybody's operating agreements within the district. And I think in a lot of ways, we have like a neutral sort of political partner to share it. Inglewood doesn't have its own, or has its own district, but
Sheridan doesn't really have the capacity to renegotiate the way Littleton is. Like this, the internal capacity.
I'm just thinking about how we always do Tri-Cities process.
Right.
Inglewood wouldn't be a part of this, it'd be like a process. I don't know if Sheridan wants involved or has anything to contribute or there's leverage to be gained there by involving them. Just it's
I can talk to their sustainability manager and see what she says.
My sense is they have some frustrations of their own with South Suburban. I think they feel, sometimes pretty underserved by the district compared to like a Lone Tree.
Imagine.
So what else do people think? I mean, it's a good start.
I liked the plan that was laid out that you had.
I think some measurable goals that they can be held accountable to and report back on is key. Because right now it's all just sounds pretty nebulous. But a plan on their behalf makes a heck of a lot of sense as a starting point.
Yeah.
Okay.
And really, if you guys got them to do a sustainability plan, that would be something.
That would get the conversation going. Was key.
Well, a lot of times I think things trickle out of that, you know. Even if we all additionally recommend a sustainability management body, that also might be part of the action plan, so.
Yeah, just like what happened here. All right.
Anything else for tonight on this?
Yeah.
I agree with Jeff's comment. Like, by the time these negotiations, materialize, we gotta have some concrete recommendations and recommended language and so on. But we've got some time to get there.
Is there anything you want me to research or dig into in this realm for January?
Could we collect the pieces from the sustainability action plan that relate to this and just like put them all in one place? I feel like that's a good starting point for the things we want, right? So
Yeah.
that would be another place to start in addition to like a model park ordinance. Maybe we find one.
Yeah, I sort of actually
Or state even.
been doing that by accident, but because I've been grouping them that way, but that's, you want it specifically for ones that relate directly to South Suburban, not to City of Littleton parks practices.
Yeah, because that could be, part of our list.
Yeah,
And then adding this idea to it too, because I don't think we did anything about or limiting. I mean, we said rewilding, so I guess that kind of fits in with rewilding, but it doesn't specifically say, please don't add more concrete.
And artificial turf is made of plastic, right? So
Yeah,
that's
which
not
is not
always.
very-
Turf isn't it either.
Yeah, so I feel
So
like
those
there's some things
I know
we
there's
might
things
wanna-
that come up, it's like, that was such a huge document, but
Yeah.
it's still,
Hard to-
There's also like there's a lot of money out there for things like turf conversion through, I was looking at like Research Source Central. I'm not sure how much is just for homes though, so I need to reach out to them and get that clarification. I do know that South Suburban has pretty state-of-the-art irrigation systems. And they are able to control those and figure out like water conservation with that. They might already have some existing data in place. I don't know if anyone's analyzing it, but that's also an interesting thing to think about.
I think they did mention that.
Irrigation, yeah.
I think they did mention.
Wonder if where they would give the data over, you know?
Doesn't hurt to ask
It's not
nicely.
probably our job to deal with it though, it's theirs, right?
Yeah, but it would be a measurable, right?
Right, if we wanted to ask them to analyze it.
Your improvement.
Yeah.
That's another potential recommendation we make to the negotiators, is something along the lines of transparency when it comes to South Suburban disclosing its internal data. They treat it almost like it's proprietary and protecting like trade secrets. It's really weird. Like getting at the budget has always been super hard. Even getting at the
Well, I found their entire budget for 2024 and went through like the 60-page document and it is
Well, it goes
really
to.
interesting, like 2 hours passed, I didn't realize. You can find the whole thing and what the line items are might be different interpretations, but you could ask them for more clarification and a better like key for it.
And I'm not thinking just in terms of budget, I'm thinking of anything that
Yeah.
pertains to sustainability or comes out of any sustainability effort.
There is very little related to sustainability.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, we're like such an obvious stakeholder, all the district, municipalities, so, I mean, we're paying like taxes to these people and they're elected officials and.
There's a certain amount of money that y'all could recommend that would be earmarked for sustainability, or if they do a certain amount of savings from these programs, like
Should go.
the cost that they might have for water reduction and thinking about, okay, well, what are you putting that savings towards? Can you put it to more programs in this realm? Can you hire someone to do a greenhouse gas inventory? Right, like there's more creativity there than in a budget than what might look like.
So I wrote down some type of governance structure, a formal sustainability action plan, the enforcement mechanism, the possibility of offering financial incentives for sustainability work, some type of annual reporting out, measurables, and transparency of data. It's a starting point.
I have about the same, gonna shoot my notes over.
There's a lot of, we use the word South Suburban a lot in our action plan. I guess one thing Amy, if she was still on the board, would want us to say is the wastewater permit. Probably a concrete recommendation that we would want.
So that actually is a great, if we're ready to move on to B, that's a good segue. I can start with that exact recommendation, but
Yeah, let's do that.
I spoke about that. That is being recorded. That permit, well, I guess the best way to go through this, so anything that I spoke on last time that I had an update on, I've highlighted, and then I highlighted where we ended in the plan. And I sent this ahead of time to sort of have y'all look at it so that I'm not just harping on specific ones. I believe, the section on permitting for South Suburban is, they do their own, I'm almost positive they do their own permitting, right? That's
You do have to get a permit from them, yeah, if you
right.
want to use something on their facility.
But it's not through us, correct? They operate all of that on their own, but we could give recommendations around it.
You're just talking about like a permit for using like a
Wastewater?
pergola at the like Emerald Landing or something, or what do you like?
I'm assuming it's related to water.
Yeah, I mean, if you do something on our facility, like when we rehab the well at Kettering, I had to get a permit from South Suburban
Like it's like a,
to do that.
There's
It was
different
free,
water
but
districts.
Still had to get a permit just so that.
Water and wastewater district. Yeah, even if you're a government entity or a
Right.
special district.
Yeah, but as a special district, I do think they do it separately from the city.
It's a little different procedure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think they probably do that through what, Denver Water and South Platte Renew?
Depends on the district. Yeah. It could be, they changed their name. It's not SEMSWA anymore. But SEMSWA is an example.
Is that what you were talking about?
I didn't quite understand Amy's thing fully, but she was
Oh.
pretty passionate about it. I think-
Yeah, well, we can get to that. I mean, I can pull that out for January. I'll probably have that in the next update anyhow. But I think my understanding is that they actually, that is one thing they are compliant with because they really have to be.
What is within-
Like the water permitting stuff, and they do it separately from us.
Oh, you're talking about their MS4 permit.
Right, yeah, is that separate?
Well, they're not covered by us, so they
Right.
must have their own.
I thought that was the issue, is that
Yeah, I think that's what Amy's, then they don't have the appropriate permitting for the effluent or the wastewater that they're putting out there, I think.
Someone said they did. If
Sure
you
they
looked
do.
into
They're
it.
big enough that they would have to have their own permit for that.
We'll
follow
up with Amy Yeah, I don't think so. You have you don't have the action plan up, do you? If it's hard to get to, that's okay. The specific, I mean, we've spent some time on it. Unless something's changed since we wrote the action plan. okay, I don't mean to go off track, it's something that can be for this long.
It's okay. I mean, I guess it is related to South Suburban. What might be more productive is if we go through the points I already have on here, and I'll make sure to talk to the right people and do research on that specific one for next time. Yeah. As long as that's okay with everyone. I'm not 100% sure. I don't wanna give any wrong.
So in the action plan, one of the items we have is, it says South Suburban Parks and Rec Board does not have a stormwater permit. The city should inspect all construction activities.
Is that like 5.1.1? 5.1.1? That's what I thought.
This is clearly Amy's language, and again, unbelievably, South Suburban Parks and Rec does not have a stormwater permit. That's another item, 5.2.2.
Can hear Amy's.
Yeah, I was like, the tone definitely comes through there.
I have sections 1 through 4 on here now, so I'll probably add in 5 and I'll add in 5 and 6 for January, and I'll pick out the ones related to South Suburban so we can focus on them.
Okay.
That sounds helpful.
Yeah.
I don't know the best way, if anyone has anything, if y'all wanna quickly just look at the updates I had for these two and just ask any questions. Sorry, this little box.
Still have it. One of us said it was okay, but no.
Those were just the updates I got from other. Yeah. And then this one too is just that I know y'all met the Tri-Cities business coordinator a couple meetings ago, and he had mentioned then that he ran this event and it went really well on November 18th, and it's kind of in the same realm, like parallel to it, but for the commercial side of the house. And I'm supposed to meet with the Arapahoe EV Action Plan group later this week, so they are pushing a lot of education components of it, so I can continue to see what else they're planning to do at the county level. They're the ones coordinating it, but we are a member and have a say, so this fits right into that. I keep going. So I think this is where we stopped. And I don't know if the best way is for me to run through it or for y'all to just take a look and see what questions you may have. I'm just trying to get this. Yeah, I actually did have a question for y'all on 1.2.11. And just curious if there's anything that y'all have seen any other municipalities do in this realm.
A lot of Nick's expertise.
Yeah, that was gonna say.
A lot of what?
They're a previous member
Oh, okay.
that was very knowledgeable about electrification and.
Does that foreclose any municipal? Just
I did some initial research, and the state of California comes up everywhere when you just type in this, right? This is done at the state level, and that I think was probably about 40 steps above what I do, how they probably got this passed, which is really cool. There was a town in Colorado that I saw that tried to do it, and the whole town banded together. Escaping me what the name of the town is. But I have not really seen much. However, the one thing I am thinking about is there's this group called, what is it, CC4CA, like Colorado Communities for Climate Action. And they have policies and guidelines set out. And if you want to be a member, you can pay into it, and they have a set of policy agreements that your council has to buy into. They bring that to the state and they lobby for things like this. So they're definitely pretty progressive. So it'd have to be something that the city and council has an appetite for and something that everyone wants to buy into, but that would be more getting at this point than I think. I would be able to do. Just because I do think it's probably a lot of lobbying of the oil and gas industry in the state of Colorado. Based on the research I did, but this, I don't know everything, so if there's something that I'm not thinking about that y'all know, I'm all ears, but that's sort of my take.
It's a state thing, it can be a state thing.
Yeah.
The state's hard at work on a lot of this stuff and has like a massive supermajority backing up all the legislative perspective.
And if y'all have interest in CC4CA, I can send the info. They can come to a meeting. When I worked at City of Arvada, the executive director came and spoke to their version of y'all's board. And they were the ones that were deciding if they were bringing that to council. Cause it has to be approved by the city's council in order to be a member, so that they know that you're politically aligned with what they're trying to lobby. If that's of interest, I'm more than happy to reach out. I know someone there too.
I'm just putting feelers out, or
Sure.
I'd be curious to know before they come talk to us, like a general sense of what types of policies they
Yeah.
require council adopt or.
Yeah, I can see if they're willing to just send it to me and I can bring it to y'all as well. Cause you might have a good sense of what is feasible and not feasible in that realm. That's the best idea for getting at this one. And then, yeah, the one below it, the codes, I spoke to a bunch of different stakeholders in the city that are working on them, and they said they should be ready to adopt January 2025. So that's the EV ready codes.
Big deal.
Big deal.
Yeah.
Do you know, Laura or Brent, do you know if it's on council's agenda for January?
I can. It's,
There yet, but
I honestly don't know if the calendar is updated yet.
I can pull the tentative.
There is also an offer, if y'all are interested in codes, by some of people that work on it much more in detail than I do, that are experts, that can come and talk to y'all about any questions you have. And that could be for anything related to, they offered buildings, potentially land use, and then what's the last one? You do. Who's Matt Megan? Who's the code? Is it land use?
What's
And then
that?
Jared Chipman. Land use.
Yeah.
Yeah, they offered to come in as well, if there's an interest of having them as a speaker to pick their brain about this stuff.
talked about this recently at a meeting, and a lot of these are just technical documents, basically. If they're gonna adopt them, go ahead and adopt them. I don't know if I have anything to add. When it comes to the unified land use code, though, I mean, we have some future effort to weigh in on something to do with ULUC, and we're gonna have to, I mean, that'll be a big heavy lift, and it'll take a ton of time, and I don't think use of us talking about it right now.
Okay. Sounds good. Oh, this was for emission standards from lawn and garden equipment. And I was just curious, are there businesses in Littleton that sell gasoline equipment still? There are. Home Depot.
Those definitely do.
Like the national ones?
And there's an Ace over on Broadway.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably could even like go to Target or something. I don't know if they're selling best powered lawnmowers, but I'm sure the hardware stores, the big box stores do.
And if there's a new Costco soon.
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out the legality of this one.
I think Boulder did this, so they might have some policies to look at.
Okay.
Or at least the landscaping companies, I think they were able to there, or provide a ton of incentives so that they do it optionally.
I don't think our board was interested in like trying to ban sales of gas powered lawn equipment locally. It was more like, can we electrify the city landscaping? Can we get education materials out to people to encourage them? Like, I don't think a lot of people are aware of that. That statistic stuck out to me as the craziest statistic in the entire.
Oh, it is crazy,
Yeah.
but
The
what was
emissions
what you
from
told me
lawn
about
garden,
the,
yeah.
what the city's doing, that there's a law that we're gonna be in.
Well, there's a
compliance
state
with?
law that says you have to convert all your 10 horsepower gas
Oh, right here.
equipment to battery power by the end of 25. And Kelsey's well on her way to getting it all converted. In fact, I think they're even looking at an electric lawnmower that they're gonna demo, so. I think we're well on our way to complying with this particular law, so,
For the city.
yeah, for the city.
I think there was some educational component we had in mind as a board for city.
Okay. I'm talking to our tech webmaster and I'm gonna start trying to figure out how to build out a more streamlined use of resources. And I'm thinking about it through if you're either like a resident, a business, a contractor, you're looking at sustainability in Littleton, like what resources do you need to know about? So I'm gonna work with them about that, and this can be part of that piece too.
It's probably just a matter of time before you start hearing about like Denver giving financial incentives to its residents in the same way that we're giving financial incentives to buy electric bikes. And, you know, we're smaller, so it's harder for us to come up with money to do things like that, but something to think about.
I think I spoke with you about this, but they have something called a climate protection fund in the city of Denver. You're nodding. And it's a lot of money, but the voters chose in the city to create a very large pocket of money that can only go towards sustainability. So no matter what the economic climate is, they have this money and they're doing this work. And I think 40 or 50% has to go to environmental justice work specifically. And they have a whole team that works on all of this. And that's also how they have money to do these like fancier, these really cool programs, is because the voters decided like, we want to put money towards this as part of our taxes, the city. And I'm not, that could be possible here, I have no idea. It obviously would not be as, we don't have the population they have, as you were saying, but there could be a way to have more sustainable funding for programs like that. If it's something you are interested in, I can talk to some of my colleagues at Denver and see.
Yeah.
It's pretty new for them, so they got it done in the past couple of years. I don't know. I don't know what the difference is in the vote. It was a ballot initiative, so it was up to the voters. So I don't know how that changes things, but I think that's how they are able to do a lot of those rebate programs.
It's a huge priority for people because there's so many other things.
I think there's a little bit more low hanging fruit, but I
Yeah,
wanted to throw it
exactly.
out there as
Yeah.
a way of sustainable funding to think about maybe in moving forward as more things are checked off the list to plant a seed.
It could be something to revisit after the operating agreement discussions.
Your travels, if you happen upon these people from Denver.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, this code hasn't been released yet. So that's kind of all I got for that.
Released from who?
Colorado Energy Office.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry about this box. I'll just sit back down. Yeah, this one was, I spoke to the permitting. They haven't had anyone apply for a heat pump or anything. Like, we sort of went through it.
There's no way that's true.
That's not true.
There's no
My
way
neighbors
that's true.
did.
I
They said
did.
they got a permit,
I
yeah.
did just in the last few months. If you just got someone,
Yeah.
it just means their data.
I checked with them after the last meeting and I was like, did you get a permit for this? This is a very by the book person. And they said they did.
Yeah, I for sure burned it.
That makes sense. I would be surprised if people in this room didn't.
Maybe they didn't get anything for an all-electric new home build, but they
Okay.
have gotten
Yeah, maybe
permits
they
for
need
all
to-
those other things.
Yeah.
Permit swap out.
So is there anything that they can do to streamline that process, reduce the cost for people?
How long did it take for your permit to go for a heat pump?
And how expensive was it?
Well, you don't have to, do you know how long it took?
I don't remember feeling any inconvenience about it at all.
Okay.
It wasn't slow or delayed.
I think in the conversations around this one, it was related to like builders maybe, and like having their, like if there's a development or something being built that it could be expedited as opposed to a non. Like I'm like, does that sound?
More in like land use code?
Incentive.
Not necessarily like a homeowner?
No, I don't think it was land use. I think it was just related to like, if a developer comes in and wants to build something, how do we incentivize them to go all electric? And one of the incentives could be faster permitting. I think that's kind of where this stemmed
Oh,
from.
okay. That makes more
So
sense.
it's not necessarily like, you know, Scott going and getting his heat pump approved.
Okay.
I think, I could be wrong, but if that sounds familiar, that's what I recall discussions around just, yeah, trying to get, because this does say new building permitting. So I think it was more of a developer incentive that we were thinking.
It's totally anecdotal, but there's a member of Vibrant Littleton whose name I'm forgetting, but he was on Easter, is that right? And he like did a scrape and built a green home. And I remember talking with him a couple years ago and he was like, dude, like the conversations with the city and the city back to like our builder are like shenanigans. Like there's just a lot of like one paradigm trying to talk to another paradigm and it just, I don't know, it slowed things down and it, I think there are specific goals around it to achieve. I don't know, stuff like that I think is kind of saying what we have in mind.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So less ad hoc and more like if you're developing a brand new something.
Well, more familiarity among the permitters. What is this thing you're trying to build? Like,
Yeah.
I've seen that before. And I don't know if the code updates solve that problem in certain ways, but.
I have a meeting with them in a week or two, so I can ask and reply to.
Well, just trying to think here. So the permitting costs are they're adopted by council once a year, right? All the costs for each permit. I mean, we could incentivize all electrical. We'd have to talk to the community development a little bit about how they charge for a permit for building a house.
I think that might be a game of whack-a-mole because I think they just charge I think the costs are meant to be one-to-one correlated with administering the permitting program. In other words, like, it's meant to, it's just meant to pay for itself. The city doesn't get like other revenues from it, I don't
Or
think.
maybe they could, like if it's not electric, it's charged 10% more.
Instead of a cost savings incentive, it's a, you get bumped to the front of the line incentive.
Yeah.
If we can actually do this, which would be great, could we also add commercial buildings and not just homes? I know it says homes up here, but there's a lot of new commercial that gets built here too, so that would be great if we could expand like just a little bit more.
You have anything like that in the action plan? Like that?
Commercial?
Yeah, I hope so.
There was city buildings and then I don't know if there's, I feel like I should know at this point. We'll get there if it is, but I'll make a note of it.
Often forgotten category, so I try to champion the commercial building.
We have a little more capacity.
So 1.3.7, the metered energy efficiency transaction structure meets. Energy efficiency is often not prioritized in commercial buildings because long-term gains cannot be realized in a market where ownership changes often. Model a program after meets, which incentivizes all parties towards energy efficiency. Additional provisions could be added to support electrification. That's the only thing I can find in it.
Yeah. I need to do more research on meats.
That may be something Aiden can help us out with, right?
Yeah. Talk to him. Let me just write in some notes down. Okay, sorry. Yeah, this is sort of the same realm that we were talking about with the climate protection fund. It's like similar to Denver. I don't know if it might have been a small sales tax increase, but I think I looked it up and it might just be now through their climate protection fund. Might have switched it.
Yeah, if the city doesn't do things like that, you get environmental justice fault lines just
around who has more money to replace like like an electric one, or it's like $600-700, sometimes more.
Yeah, there is a lot of money out there for disproportionately impacted communities. I will say that Littleton does not have very many that meet the qualifications. There are a couple pockets, because I was looking through CDPHE's EnviroScreen. The Colorado Department of Public Health and the Environment puts out a GIS tool of their definitions. That's basically all the state funding. And then I looked through the EPA version of the funding. So that's like from like also the White House, all the federal funding.
J screen,
Um,
there's like so many tools to
I was
evaluate.
looking at it's like CEGSJST.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yet another one.
Yes,
I mean, there's so
there's
many.
Yeah, that's a hard one.
I was sitting there like holding up my physical map of Littleton and that map being like, where's the street? Like trying to see, because the census blocks don't all match up with the city
One
lines.
tool will say like, yes, disadvantage, and another will say nope. And so it's like,
Right, so there's a few areas in Littleton where that is the case, but it's really hard to tell how much of it, well, for me at least, is like Englewood versus Littleton for like very specific like census blocks. So I was trying to actually go through that like yesterday, because there's very specific funds for that.
who are the funds through? I'm sorry, was that a state thing?
So I was looking at like different types of financing models through, I think it's like through banks. Like they have been doing all of these different tools, and then I was looking at state funding as well. That was more for the EnviroScreen. When I was looking at the White House CEJST tool, it's like they do some of it through like green bank collaboratives, GBCs, and then they're having this entire process, what I emailed you about today, they're having this entire process and proposal for next year. You have to have at least one. I'm almost positive Littleton has one, but I'm gonna ask them on their webinar and see, because then we qualify for certain electrification, like financing tools, which would be pretty huge. I don't know what the sustainability of like the financial sustainability, I should clarify, of federal funds is, so that is another thing I wanna ask. I'm not sure.
I was
But
gonna go, so back to the permitting, so it is on the January 21st tentative schedule, a resolution adopting the 2025 fee schedule. So that might be an opportunity for us to go talk to community development, see if we can get less costly permitting for electric cars. So.
Moved.
okay. Thanks, Brent.
Yeah, thanks, Brent.
So this thing with the multimodal, I actually spoke with a lot of the transportation folks at Public Works, and this is actually a huge part of their conversation that's been pushed by their Transportation Mobility Board. I just suppose if y'all want to meet with them and discuss more, happy to set that up. I don't know exactly what they've already necessarily done in that realm. I'm not sure if you do.
Well, I mean, they've done a lot of plans, so like there's a Littleton connectivity plan about, you know, connecting all the trails and everything through town. They're also looking at more protected bike lanes and that kind of stuff, so that it's safer to actually ride your bike through town. So there's a bunch of pilot projects that they're gonna be bringing to council in February 25th, I think, is when they're gonna come to council and talk about their program for the year, so there'll be more detail then.
I didn't seem like there was too much of an interest in coordinating a meeting with them, but still on the table.
It seems like, I mean, from what I understand, it seems like a lot of their focus is already on kind of the walkability and connectivity pieces that we'd probably be preaching as well. So as far as priority, I think it's lower for me, just because I think their goals probably align pretty closely with ours. So as much as it would be interesting, I don't know if we would be saying a whole lot that they're probably not already thinking about.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of council momentum behind this particular.
Yeah.
Or safer streets.
Yeah.
Vision zero. Like,
Safer streets, Littleton.
Yeah.
I think a huge part of this conversation is really above our pay grade, just because it's so phenomenally expensive to build for multimodal communities. It's like, you gotta talk about densification and bus rapid transit and, it's like, you've gotta re-envision the physical landscape. It's like billions of dollars to make it happen, but I think the ideas that are available have been pretty well, talked to by council and
Okay. For school buses, I can collaborate and partner with Littleton Public Schools. They, as with the rest of the state of Colorado, are a separate entity, but we do partner with them and work with them. I definitely want to down the line, I think in terms of what we have operational and financial control over, this might not be the first thing I would want to do. They're continuously putting out money to electrify school buses. It's definitely something I can provide information with and figure out the best point of contact.
there was an interesting kind of ancillary benefit from this when Nick was talking about this. That may mean that we want to push it, I don't know, just an open question, which was electrified buses provide grid resilience in off hours, which I thought was actually really important. Especially as you're talking about doing more electrification. Like, we all know that the grid has to be like meaningfully up there. I'm thinking about getting solar, and I was talking to someone about sort of Boulder's experience, and in the aftermath of the Marshall fire, a lot of people rebuilt all electric homes, but like 5,000 square foot, like Boulder style, right? Like all electric homes, and they're having like legit blackout problems. So like a lot of people have to build in storage, so that they have a continuous flow of electricity. And I think like school buses are really meant to be like this huge reservoir of like available backup electricity. Kind of like a Ford F-150 Lightning has like so much, because they're just sitting there at night.
It's really interesting. I know that the Colorado Energy Office has a grant that they do, so I can reach out and see if there's any appetite for someone that's there that wants to manage that process, and I can assist them in any way I can. I think I'm personally actually looking a lot more at the city fleets and not electrification, and I am trying to figure out grid capacity. So I've been talking to the engineers and I'm looking at some stuff with Excel to try to figure out exactly what the long-term plan is for our fleet electrification. I think in terms of what grid the school buses are on, I can provide them help, but the path I'm going on, they'd have to have someone really excited. I don't know if I could take it over for them or not.
I think it might be interesting to just know, like, we could talk to the council, the school board, and just see if they are aware of anything like this already in process. I mean, LPS might actually,
Do you have a contact for them?
I don't know who the school board is on right now. Does anyone know?
Well, yeah, I know Jim meets regularly with the superintendent. I'm sure we could start the conversation there.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I was just gonna say, it sounds like it's more so kind of where you're going, but just making sure they have the information. If there are grants available, to pursue changing the school bus fleets over, but.
I think it'd be good if Jim's talking to the superintendent anywhere and the liaison's talking to someone, to just follow up on that. No nothing thing that we had talked about. See if it's an initiative that they're aware of or interested in.
Yeah.
What was it called? Whatever, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Idling.
Idling.
Right, for non-emergency vehicles. Yeah, it might be something they're actually already thinking about, so I can reach out and see see what it's like to set that up with them. This one I'm happy to hear if there's thoughts on this, the decommissioning.
we have something that would be a good target. That kind of initiative, like do we have aging infrastructure that's considered for like rehabilitation? I'm not aware of.
Like for city buildings,
Or
for,
just anything that the city has control over.
Excel might know, or Excel would know. No, I would think, like where the oldest that they would maybe need to consider placing, and in lieu of that, we could advocate for electrification. But I think that's how I'm reading this item.
Another equity question, right? I mean, if hypothetically, like the aging natural gas infrastructure wasn't a core part of the community, it's like, surprise, it's electrification time. It's like, well, there's just a whole bunch of questions around this type of thing.
you have to bring everyone along. It's required. Yeah, wait, so, I'm sorry, what were you saying about Excel, that they would have this information?
Well, yeah, like aging natural gas infrastructure. I don't know that like this group or like city staff would know that, but I would assume Excel would know that to help start addressing this one. Right? And so it seems like that's what you're planning to do anyway, so it seems like that's all covered.
Yeah, they're so excited to meet with me all the time.
Are they not? Why wouldn't they?
I was like, Excel actually has a pretty good sustainability team.
It depends on, yeah, if I'm working with their sustainability team, it's great. I'm not always working with theirs. Okay. And we talked about meets. I'm actually been working a lot for this fleet one. So been working alongside the city's fleets team, and then I've been working backwards to figure out chargers and then now grid capacity. And thinking about how we can think about increasing grid capacity, because that seems to be the biggest barrier to electrification, but they have started. There are, I think, 4 EVs right now, and they're looking at more. They have grant funding for the vehicles. The chargers are not the issue, it is the grid. So I need to work with Excel and see if they have any grants coming down the line, because I think they might have run out of funding in the last cycle they got to our application.
I guess for us, the big issue, we want to install more chargers at the city center, but we need XL to upgrade the infrastructure so that we can handle the load. So that's the part we're working on, but
Global problem.
Yes.
And nationwide problem.
And same thing with the electric city buildings. I have been speaking with the facilities team about looping me into conversations around scrap and rebuild projects and being part of the design and bringing in the capacity and resources around grants to make it doable, to have matching funds for certain electrification efforts. I also know the city of Louisville has committed to be, I think, completely zero emission by 2050, and they're one of the first in the country. And I spoke to their sustainability manager recently, and she gave me all of that information, which was super interesting. They are a part of Boulder County, so that's something to think about, but doesn't mean I can't pull some of it from there and see the way that they've gone about that.
Brent, what's the status of conversation or any plans around replacing some of those older buildings at the LU campus, the public works campus?
yeah, so in January, we'll be going to council to talk about debt funding, actually.
Oh, there we go. There's an opportunity.
Yeah, so it is one of our priorities, and we've even talked about it. Our facilities manager is actually LEED certified, so we could really, if we get enough money to build those, or replace buildings 2 and 3, we could really do something kind of special over there.
Been talking to her about it some
Yeah.
too, to make sure that we're on the same page, as well as with the engineer.
Is there a target for the debt funding? And does that target include a conversation about how much it costs to electrify those buildings?
I think we're just at the part of, you know, how much is it gonna cost to build them at this point? I guess we could talk about, I guess it's more expensive to go all electric
Yes, but,
But-
but there are a lot of, if we had the money to do a normal building, right, you can put that towards a matching grant so that someone, usually the state, there are different
So there's
grants.
some grant opportunities to do that.
There's a fair amount that I've been looking at where you can apply, and as long as you have the upfront match, they will match it if you're going and committing to all electric for that project. And some of it also, there's also ways to stack it with tax credits and rebates. There's a lot out there.
Do you mind, Laura, just making sure you just inject yourself in that conversation?
Yes. I've been working on it.
That sounds like it would be a huge opportunity that's basically happening. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been trying to just get in people's offices and let them know I'm around. And get in, on any of the design and help them figure out that funding piece.
Yeah, I mean, really, right now, we're trying to figure out the actual budget number. And I think probably in another couple weeks, we're gonna know what that is, so. I think it's probably 20 million.
It's probably tens of millions.
I can also send them options for what those grants look like. I just need the green light for them to say go for it after that conversation initially.
Are there, so you're talking about bonded money, right?
Yeah, this is COPs, does that sound right? Where you issue debt off of, your existing buildings that you own. I think that's what we'd like to do for building buildings 2 and 3. And then there's a debt conversation about how to do downtown, which is much more complicated.
Or are there financial institutions that focus on that type of thing? Like you could go get better rates from a company that's specifically we could bond with to do that type of a project?
I think so. I would have to do a fair amount more research, feel comfortable like speaking to this more. It's very, very deep in financial weeds, but there are banks and like very specific financial incentives from private companies that are partnering with public entities to come together to provide this funding to local governments.
Isn't he still the finance director? Is Tiffany Hooten still the finance director? You might talk with her. Like, as we.
I emailed her this week to
Oh,
meet
you
with
did?
me. But yes, I'll write.
Not everybody's calendar, I
Yeah,
like.
it's great. What were you saying I should ask her about?
Just as we come to have this conversation about bonding, to build these new buildings, is there some interesting financial opportunity? Or some new relationship with some financial institution that could let us do this? Something that's advantageous for the city.
Yeah, maybe I'll bring her a summary when I go to the webinar that explains their next grant cycle. And see if she has a good path forward for it.
Backtracking just a tad, because you mentioned Louisville, and I remembered a headline back from like July that they're the first city to fully adopt electric waste management fleet through Republic. And so it's not a city fleet, but it is obviously trucks that drive through the city, and it kind of, for me, dovetails with, I don't know which numbered item it is, but around waste management. Yeah.
That is a big conversation.
Yeah, so obviously it's a big conversation, but I thought it was really cool since Louisville is clearly doing a lot of really cool things. That basically any Republic trucks servicing the city of Louisville are now electric. So that could be a really cool part of a larger conversation around, waste management in the city.
The way they pulled that off is probably a really interesting little government case study. That can't be easy to do.
Yeah, she sent me all of her and her predecessors' notes on how they accomplished it all, like earlier today, so I should sift through and see how they were able to get that part done. She did admit that some of it was magically in place. Yes, they do. She said the single hauler contract was in place before she started. So she had she told me that she could connect me with the person that started it though. And I can talk with them. I think there's, yeah, I didn't realize how political trash was
Oh,
until
yeah.
I got into it. But I am part of the South Metro Waste Diversion Study, which is going to show a comprehensive waste composition that we are planning to submit to council. That's gonna give a grade on how we are doing for all of this diversion, and it's not looking great. So it's gonna be a bit of a wake-up call, and I mean, having the conversation about single hauler has led to recalls in our VADA of council members apparently. And I don't know if they went through Englewood, they like had these people come and rebel at the meeting and they had to table it.
One vote away from passing it.
They were passing the single hauler, like,
It's just such a.
One of the council members didn't show who
Care
from
about.
the National Environmental.
Why
Board
care?
didn't show up for the meeting.
Choice.
It's so.
There is
It's-
don't tread on my trash.
Yeah, I-
very local
where I come
law.
from, the city has run it my whole life. I didn't know there was another option. And I was like,
So, I moved in, it took me so long to figure out how to, I was like, wait, so I get to pick,
there are more than 11 waste haulers that service Littleton.
That's awful.
I did a pretty comprehensive look, but we would have to go through some type of process to make it fair to them about who we choose.
Yeah.
I've already had haulers start to call me, worried about business.
No way. Yeah, Laura.
They should be.
Yeah.
The word is out.
Tell them if they have an electric fleet. Have an electric fleet. Yeah, exactly.
Ask go electric.
I mean, I feel like that'd be a huge incentive to say, I mean, that would be tough, cause it would kind of probably push out a bit of the smaller companies cause there's a huge investment required to go all electric, but
I mean, even having a choice of 3, right? If you had, I mean, I would prefer single hauler, as probably everyone in this room would, but even if you were to say, like, if you needed to say, okay, these are the 3 that operate, and they have agreements with the city, and the agreements with the city, they have to provide data on their tonnage and their greenhouse gas emissions, like, they don't have to do any of that right now. Like, the data requests I've sent for the greenhouse gas inventory to them, like, one of them claimed that they don't haul waste. So, where we're at now, there needs to.
a waste hauler that doesn't haul waste.
Yes,
What do they call it?
they said that they bring it from.
They're not hauling.
Wow.
He sent me 2 emails about.
Who is that?
That's insane.
I don't mean to get.
It's insane.
Yeah, I don't know why I feel bad, but, well, I kind of don't.
Tell us.
They used to be my person when I lived in Broomfield and I didn't like them then either. I followed their truck actually, but it's fine. They don't recycle, but anyways, all of that is to say that I think there are ways that even if there isn't an appetite for single haulers, to greatly reduce the amount of trucks coming through and what they are required to do through licensing. Like it'd be great even if there's a page on the Littleton website that's like, these are the 3 people that we recommend, even if we got to that point of course, I would prefer single hauler. I'm very much on y'all's page with all of this.
I mean, I think you go all electric and then it's nice and quiet down the street.
And then you have to pave less asphalt and concrete.
I didn't mean to open up that.
The wear and
I
tear.
just wanted to point out that Louisville is doing it, and I think it's cool.
I'm also pretty passionate about, the single hauler stuff, so that's where, maybe it came in a little bit there, but.
Give Laura a couple more minutes and then we can transition to our last.
Yes, yeah, we have potentially lost track of time. The public EV charging plan for Arapahoe, I did bring up accessibility and the idea that like someone like in the future, how we could figure out if like a developer came in, do they have to pay and install EV chargers and solar panels? Like Costco can afford that. I mean, that was done before I started, but thinking about things in the future, how can that be looped into the conversation? So I brought it up in my meeting with Arapahoe County specific to public EV charging, and they said they were gonna create a map and figure out how to make it equitable. We'll see.
A map that basically just includes where chargers are.
A map that includes where they are and where they could be. So like thinking about the whole thing is back to grid capacity. So thinking about if and who does that grid capacity, it could be that the county decides to take that on for certain spaces if this is their initiative, and it's also through Excel Partners of Energy, so it's possible that Excel would be willing to help with that for the public infrastructure. It would have to be technically Littleton, Arapahoe County, but yeah, for this way. So it is 8:05. Did you want to move to the last one?
Yeah, I think we ought to.
Yeah, I'm sorry, this keeps taking a little bit.
No, it's good discussions.
Longer.
Get back on it, even if it takes a minute.
Yeah, so this, I think here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so our plan for developing recommendations for the joint study session with city council and overall 2025 ESB planning. It's a big topic.
It is. I just sort of put it in there. It's very broad, just in case.
We get a pick, don't we, the timing for our study session with council, more or less?
I thought you were aiming for March. Does that sound right?
Yeah, about March. Cause that might align well with, the negotiations, right?
Wasn't that kind of the, someone remind me, it was, let's use that time to be talking about the South Suburban stuff, or? Is that right?
I think so,
I think
yeah.
so, yeah. I don't see it on the tentative calendar, but
I think it was the March 4th meeting, or the March 11th study session.
yeah. There's a joint study session with planning commission on the 11th.
Hmm.
Probably fitting on the 25th of March.
Of March.
Is that just our, let's use that as our target, the draft recommendation in front of council for the South Suburban negotiations? And also be talking to them about what we want to take up after that.
Yeah, I guess. What do y'all, is it normally for them like a multiple choice for what y'all want to work on? Or is it like they provide like a fill in the blank? Like what's the format when thinking to the future?
I mean, I think it has to be iterative. I mean, I don't disagree with what Pam was saying earlier, that we can just on our own initiative start picking stuff. The issue is, will council pass it? Right? Like, I don't want to waste a bunch of time doing something they're not interested in.
Give them a multiple choice, like y'all decide like 4 things you're excited about?
There's also a question of, broader political timing, like this South Suburban stuff is a perfect example. We're working on it because the city already was reconsidering the operating agreement. So we have an opportunity to jump in. Want us to always be, pull in that way. I don't know, it's iterative and it's a question mark for me. I don't know. We talk about it a lot.
I also appreciated, like with NJAC, we were a lot more, I would say even more nimble than this board in terms of like when a topic came up, we would just jump on it and address it. So like something like this, we'd be like, yeah, we, majority of us find interest in it. And, within a couple of months, we'd come up usually with like a memo. So like the work product that we came up with was huge compared to a lot of the stuff that we did with NJAC. A lot of times with it was the Next Generation Advisory Committee, we would literally for something like this, I didn't want Scott to buzz me. We would come up with like a less than 1-page memo that basically said, NGAC, here's our stance on this, or here's our recommendation for this topic. And I always appreciate it, even though like council, maybe it's not something they necessarily approve or, vote on at that meeting. It's still kind of stating something that we deem important for them to pay attention to. So that's another way to approach some of the topics, is they don't all, in my opinion, have to be huge undertakings like the action plan that we did. And I think in some ways that can also give us buy-in from residents who come to talk to us about these types of things, and show that we do care, we're paying attention, and it doesn't have to be a 6-month-long, year-long project. It can be a memo of support, memo of recommendation, memo of, whatever. So that's just kind of an aside on some topics that may not be as robust as a lot of the things we've been talking about.
just does side, by the way. South Suburban does that.
So that's something that, like, can things be submitted to council for them to review?
What's that?
Like, if they wanna, if you wanted to submit a memo about something, does that work? Council? Do other boards do that?
Any of us as
I've seen it, but-
just a private person, not representing the board, could just go stand up for 3 minutes at public comment and like you literally could just read this statement of Ned's or something like it to the whole council.
Yeah, it might be stronger though, coming from you.
Well, I'm just saying it's not hard.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
But I'm not sure, digging up just past some of the past NGAC stuff, like we did a handful of one-page memos that weren't always necessarily, I don't have them saved because they were on like, I don't remember there. So, but that might be something worth digging through to find past documents from NGAC. We did some bigger documents as well, but some stuff was just
So
letters of
you
support.
guys just submitted memos to the city council?
Yeah, and so sometimes it would be in regards to something that they were already voting on, and so we would say, we would basically, sign off on our support to say like, we support signing off on XYZ thing that you're voting on. That it was probably more often, as opposed to like an out in left field type of thing. But yes, we would submit a one pager that said, we support this thing that y'all are voting on today, and we encourage all council to like vote yes or whatever.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just thinking. I mean, there's a lot they're looking at in this next year, like even the unified land use codes, right, that they're gonna vote on. I'm still trying to figure out how to get access to all those edits right now, so I'm in the process of talking to that person as well.
What's their timeline for that, or do you know? Discussions and vote about some ULUC update.
I'm pretty sure that the comment period's done, right? For
Was the
you.
comment period the same as the last time with where it was like, people could view the whole thing and like, was it, I don't know if you remember that format.
I think it was that format, cause I was digging through it, and I don't think you can submit another comment right now, and I'm pretty sure that meeting is in January,
Let's see.
or is it February?
So, yeah, it looks like the second reading for the ULUC regarding neighborhood housing opportunities is in January 7th.
That just means they're voting to allow them to use, right? Which is good.
Also required, right, per the state, right?
So is this the topic they're interested in? Or is it different than that?
It's different changes to the ULUC, not related to,
Neighborhood housing?
Neighborhood
I don't
housing.
see anything.
I mean, it could talk about density if like links to public transportation, but I don't think that's,
I guess I don't see any updates to the ULUC except for the neighborhood housing opportunities.
That's a good point, though, is we should probably talk first about what council is doing in 2025.
yeah.
See if we can support, see if it dovetails with what we're doing.
I think so.
And
Are they publishing this at any point,
what's that?
this draft?
Yeah, the draft is on the website.
Oh. Okay. And they cancel, oh, well, that makes sense, it's the 24th, okay.
Steve might be useful to talk about that too.
I think so, he's not here. He's not here today, but he might know more in the next meeting.
Is Andrew all right? By the way, he was out of town or something.
Is it Andrew? He had emailed and said he wasn't gonna make it.
Oh, did he? That
Would be still.
never did wanted to do it yet.
He seems pretty busy.
He is on, I know he's on the the Denver Regional Council of Governments, like sub-work group on, decarbonization of buildings in the region and where that money is going and allocated.
That's Steve was.
Steve.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I think we're talking about another board member.
Oh,
Right?
oh,
You guys are talking about?
I see, I thought you were talking about Steve. I was like, wait, I think he is really involved. Okay.
Well, I think until March anyway, we're working on the South Suburban stuff and the updates that you're providing on work related to the action plan. I think it'd be useful to hear from Steve about what council's up to in 2025.
I think the waste conversation is going to be something that be important in the next year with the study coming out. They're also there's gonna be a regional waste summit through the study that we're doing with Sheridan and Englewood and Centennial. It's not a public meeting, so only two council members will come to each summit, but they will get sort of a primer for that information and what's already been discovered in terms of different types of modeling. They actually sorted through all of the trash and like pulled out where we can do better and knowing what is going where, which is interesting to see. But I think that will be a good primer and maybe something we want to think about how to figure out if there is an appetite for single hauler or not.
Yeah, that's gonna, require some real political backbone from council, and they're the ones who I think need to appreciate that.
And I wonder if y'all wanna write, after the study comes out, if you wanted to write a memo or something supporting it or explaining why whatever the option I was also giving, we're picking 3 or saying they need to be an all electric, like figuring out how to double down on it if I'll know more after they meet, because they'll be talking about it with the other cities. I know it's a little bit scarring for Englewood though, so.
Well, there might be opportunities to partner too, that could bring costs down. Englewood went out and got bids and they were okay, but not quite as economical as they would have anticipated, but
They'll
more partnership.
it'll lower everyone's cost to go for less, any less haulers at this point.
Yeah.
It'll be cheaper for businesses to recycle.
How many different haulers are there right now?
There's over 11.
Yeah. There's at least 4 on my street.
Yeah, there's 3 or 4 in my on my streets.
I'm not including the composting ones when I say over 11. There's 11 I identified for the greenhouse gas inventory.
It's insane.
Do they all have to be licensed?
Yeah, but it's not, like if, as you said, when you move in, if you look up trash or recycling in the city charter, the ordinance, the only thing related to the law is a noise ordinance. And the only advice that the city gives is to coordinate with your neighbors as of right now.
How is it? Just a thought, how is it that when you remove the competition, the price goes down?
It would be a contract.
They contract it, so it's basically like because
They're gonna get more business.
they
and
can
it's
get
gonna
more
be-
business, they're willing.
Question.
Yes, essentially. So it's like, it's the same thing with some of the compost companies. If you get like 11 units in a multifamily, they drop the cost by some amount because it saves them the trip. It's a better deal for them. It just is. And so that's the other, there is a financial argument for like businesses and like the business community in Littleton really is trying to figure out, they wanna recycle, but a lot of them can't afford it based on the current financing. And that's just for them to recycle like the boxes of goods they get. That's not even for me as a resident going into the coffee shop to recycle that. So I think that there is probably a need.
What is the hesitation, like, it's looking at you just because in Englewood it was voted down, like, what is the hesitation because it truly is kind of this individual, I want my own choice, or is there anything, beyond?
Choice, this is a government takeover,
This is all
is
new.
the argument
Yeah.
typically that
I
You know, I should be able to
It's
declare
like the most, yeah, like in Texas, we
my
didn't have.
provider,
It's wild.
if I have a problem with them, that there's also arguments that, like customer service might not be as good, but I think there's a flip side to that, that you have more you know,
More
if you have a
power.
contract, you can actually put enforcement mechanisms within that contract.
And have standards around noise ordinances
You
and.
have this many
Pickups, et
complaints.
cetera, you
per
can
night.
then take that contract, with like actual financial penalties, and requirements for, you know, responding to customer complaints, that sort of.
So right
thing.
now, they're like, all the haulers are licensed with the city, but there's basically no standards, do they, like, or what?
I can't find any standards. There are cities that, there aren't any, there are cities that do have, they don't have single hauler, but they have standards in place, and so there are different options, and this is all gonna tie in because I'm trying to figure this out, but at some point in the next few years, it's going to be mandatory for everyone in this state to recycle based on a state law, and there's this nonprofit that comes in and it's called like Extended Producer Responsibility, EPR, so it's supposed to put the onus on the businesses to finance and be in charge of what they produce and the waste they produce, that they pay to divert that or reduce it. And to fill in those gaps to not totally crush that community, there's a nonprofit that contracts with the state that comes in to help with that capacity. I was on like an entire 2-hour meeting. I've talked to multiple people that were on it. I still am very unclear what exactly the laws and rules are around that, but
For APR.
yeah, I wanna figure that out a little bit in conjunction with this study, in conjunction with the conversation on single hauler, cause it could just make sense if all of these things in an ideal world were to.
Yeah. Cause even from a business standpoint, so I was looking at the EPR, I work for Breckenridge Brewery, and so I was looking at the EPR in regards to like what our requirements will be, and kind of same thing, like I was kind of like going in circles around, like, I don't really understand like I understand theoretically what our role would be, but not what like legally our role would be, so. You let me know when you find out.
I don't think they fully decided, if we're being
Yeah.
honest, because when I was on the call, it was with Recycle Colorado, it was with the nonprofit that is contracted with the state, and they gave a whole presentation and it sounded great, but I think they're still working out how this is rolled out and what it means. I think in terms of the other fear for single hauler is examples like Arvada and city and council members being nervous that if there isn't an appetite in the community, they could be recalled. I don't know if that's a thing.
Remember when council did this come up, like, did y'all?
Yeah, and it was just considered a third rail. No one was going near it. It's like,
Yeah,
He has mentioned it last time we
I was
met
gonna
with
say,
him.
I always kind of wanted to pick your brain on that, like what?
She said she's been hearing it from the community. You
that
did.
they want.
here is.
Yeah. Yes.
There, according to this, that's thing with the,
It could have just been me and John Levine going to her and saying, hey, we want it, but
there is an
I
entire,
don't think it was just the two of us.
there's an entire survey as part of the study that we're in, the South Metro Waste Diversion Study, that has a resident engagement component that includes different like focus groups that has engaged with Littleton, Englewood, all of our communities. And in Littleton, there does seem to be an appetite for single hauler because people, like, environment aside, right? They're worried about the safety of their children when there's a bunch of trash trucks. It's loud, it's smelly. It also degrades the streets, right? So then you pay more taxpayer money to have all these haulers drive up and down because it wear and tear on the road.
Yeah, I mean, even if all that's true, or assuming that all of that's true, taking for granted that all of that's true, right? Even if you get it passed, right, it takes a lot of community capital to like get from where we are now to single hauler.
Yeah,
And so council's gonna have to identify it as a priority, even if they want it done. It's like, this will distract from a lot of other stuff. And we'll take resources from a lot of other stuff. And was the overwhelming message that I got from our then Public Works Director. Because when I was first on council, I remember having a conversation with him about, hey, why can't we just like do single hauler and like lob some like sustainability grenades into the community? He was like, don't even think it. Like, I don't want to do it as a Public Works Director. I don't want the community like focused on it. Like,
So is it something that council has to actually vote on? It's not just something.
Well, if we went single hauler, we'd have to probably run the contract.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, they would have to vote on it. We'd have to do an RFP
right.
and loop in the 11+ haulers.
I mean, it's not impossible, so
So maybe 10, you can leave the one that doesn't haul out.
Well, yeah, Englewood had and to interview and meet with haulers too, and to get their feedback before the RFP went out.
There was a waste hauling engagement component too with the waste haulers as part of this study, which as I know, there is a fear, right? They all would want that contract, but then there's only one out of the 11 plus, so.
It's a legitimate question for us too, as the environmental stewardship and sustainability board. If we want, like, if we had our druthers, we could just dictate to council, like, this is what we want you to work on. Is this the thing that we want working on? Is it a high enough priority for us that we want to spend that capital and that time and the resources and so on? And if the answer is yes, the answer is yes, but I think
My answer is yes.
it's something to be.
But like, I feel like it does to continue to come up over and over and over again.
Don't
I understand,
underestimate.
yeah.
If you get a critical mass of opponents and you really step into that Arvada mess of recalls and so on, you gotta think about, okay, who gets appointed, who gets elected into those spots that have just been recalled? And now you've got a very different conversation about stewardship in the community.
I will say that I think that there are a lot of factors in this upcoming year that will contribute to this conversation. So the study we're in, my greenhouse gas inventory, and also the state law, like it's inevitably happening that there has to be some type of, like Colorado as a state is actually very terrible at recycling, which is really surprising and kind of shocking. But as a state, we're really behind.
I think a lot of it needs to be communication with the community as to why we're doing this and how it benefits them and.
I know you said there was a community engagement component of the waste study. Do you happen to know if any of those questions revolved around single hauler or similar?
I don't think so, because of,
Yeah.
it's not an appetite in every community that's part of the study. I
Yeah.
think that where Sheridan has pay as you throw, so it's different. And they have a much lower cost for their waste than all the other cities with that model.
They're just weight based or? Do we have any opportunities in the upcoming year? Cause the other thing I was thinking about is there's been a lot of community surveys around parks and downtown, and I don't know if we've ever done one specifically for sustainability. Like I know there's components of sustainability in some of the other surveys, but is 2025 an opportunity to approach like a full-blown, you know, to me, I mean, maybe that also that would be a component of a climate action plan or, you know, one of these larger things that we've also talked about, but maybe it's an ad hoc opportunity to say, hey, here's a lot of these questions that, yes, we as a board think that we'd want to go one direction, but, you know, also want to hear what the priorities are for the community outside of us and council.
I agree. I know that
Our surveys can take a lot.
an example again with Arvada, I know they are doing a climate action plan now and they're wrapping up with, I believe Lotus is who they're using, and they have a huge community engagement component of their climate action plan to figure out exactly what you're saying, right? Are we the silo of the people that want X, Y, Z, right? Or they're gonna be people that come and protest? We should probably figure that out, right?
Yeah, like if we propose single hauler, are people gonna come out of the woodworks and all of a sudden, you know, vote people out of council?
Yeah, cause I know
Right.
doors.
I would love to know that. If y'all hear
People would
anything.
do surveys on like community thoughts on waste hauling, and there was a majority, I think it was like 60% that were well in favor of like a single hauler system, but the opposition is quite loud and quite vocal. Which is somewhat surprising at times, but you know, it is what it is.
Whatever we pick to recommend, I think it's just worth closely considering the potential knock-on effects of that being a priority. I think it's not overly simplistic, I don't think, for us to also say for 2025, like we pulled out some priorities in the environmental action plan and just pick one. It's like, what's next on the list, you know? If council doesn't give us some clear direction or there's not some sort of political opportunity given whatever, just what else is on the list that we want to go at. There's really fun stuff on that list. By the way, I'm not trying to come out as like anti-single hauler. It's like,
Well, I understand it's a complex issue.
Oh, it's
I
good.
don't wanna accidentally have an ally on council, you know.
Right, I think it's good to
You know,
have
you're
that
not off 'cause-
conversation because I didn't know how political it was until I knew how political it was, so it's an important,
And then, an analog for me is like a lot of my political allies when I was on council, because there was, we were doing the ULUC for the first time. And there was a conversation about, should we rezone downtown for like higher buildings? And a lot of people were like, we need more housing supply, we need more housing supply, you have to vote to like basically just pop the top off downtown. And I was like, no. Because you're gonna get, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, and like you touch something like that and you've gotta anticipate what it means for the sort of long-term politics of the city. I feel pretty similar about single hauler, but.
I still think there's like a compromise between 11 plus haulers and single hauler as well. that we
Yeah,
can
there
think
could
about.
be, there are a lot of different frameworks that could work. There could be different zones of town or like
Strict
choice
licensing
among-
agreement.
I was gonna say, what just about attacking the licensing alone? Like if
Yeah.
we update the license, like in order to operate in Littleton, you have to meet these requirements, including blah, blah, blah.
Right, and that should come out of this waste diversion study is some policy recommendations
It
for
has
us to
it
consider.
for each city specifically separated, but it is also interesting to think about if we did have zones, like how would that tip into our neighbors and thinking about the emissions of those trucks, because even if it passes the Littleton boundary, still affects you, right? So thinking about what that coordination looks like between all of us is, I think, also
Have you
valuable.
chatted with Aiden about the like Tri-Cities, like a Tri-Cities potential there?
Yes, so Mel in England is the sustainability manager for Sheridan and Englewood, and she's on the diversion study. And I've talked a lot with Aiden about it in terms of businesses, and specifically in Littleton, there's a lot of businesses upset by the price of recycling. They're like, we don't care who takes it, we need a cheaper price to be able to do it.
Yeah. So it's 8:31.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry to, no, it's good.
What's up for January again?
Yeah. Is Mike gonna check a date for the room for us?
Yeah, he was.
Is this on the first? So-
Yeah, so I think we were looking at the 8th.
15 or something.
You have to say something official to.
Well, I'm supposed to see if anyone has reports they want to share from staff or the board. I don't. All right.
Just wait to hear back on
Yeah,
January.
I'm sure Mike will be on it.
Okay.
And Laura and I will, yeah, you can, we'll be talking about.